Please come to order. The mayor is traveling and in China, so today as the president of the council, I have the honor of serving as presiding officer. Carla, would you please call the roll?
Saltzman?
Here.
Udaly?
Here.
Fritz?
Here.
Wheeler? Fish?
Here. I'm now going to call upon the city attorney to read the council conduct document.
Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations, will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Thank you very much. So we have 5 people who signed up to testify. You do not need to give us your address, and we'll do them in sequence. Carla, would you please read council item 375?
Request of Sandra Shotwell to address council regarding historic districts in Portland and Oregon.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much for welcoming me, Sandra Shotwell, and I would like to talk to you about how Portland manages its historic resources. The city developed local designations years ago with a broad city process. The designations take into account many issues important to the city, and these local designations are being set aside in favor of a national process that completely bypasses city involvement. Now a handful of self-selected people can control the process of designating a historic resource in the city, but they require the city to manage it. It's like a case of the tail wagging the dog. I'd like to point out also that neighborhood association boards are not representing the interests of all of their neighbors, let alone the city, in this process, and I'd encourage you not to privilege them with additional rights. They do some things very well. I think land use regulation is not one of them. Using my neighborhood, Eastmoreland, as an example, a small group of people decided to seek National Historic District designation. Why not use one of the local ones? The national process is much easier. You just have to show that the buildings are of a certain age. You don't have to take into account any other city values or priorities, nothing cultural. And it has no process for involving you, the representatives of the city, in the designation. So anyone can take an old neighborhood and put it in a national district and give it some of the most stringent restrictions available in the country. Why is the national process easier? It's not designed to be used this way. It's designed to be an honorary designation with voluntary guidelines. But as a result, it is an opt-out process. Everyone who's affected is assumed to be in support of it unless they sign a notarized objection. So the city also has practically no role in the designation process whatsoever. So I thought I'd just a few old school handouts. In this city of over 600,000 people with many wonderful resources we might like to preserve, our neighborhood, which has 2,000 owners, has been proposed to be a National Historic District by 20 people. It's something only well-off groups can do. This required the use of $67,000 of the neighborhood association funds, which they were able to do because they controlled the board. But they did this without city participation and without asking the neighbors whether they wanted it. Several months after submitting the application, they took a poll. 666 people were in favor, 702 were opposed. The board decided to go forward anyway. At the national level, you have an opt-out process. You must sign a notarized objection. 400 people send in letters of support. This number is irrelevant. Everyone's assumed to support. 1,040 sent in written letters of objection. The Neighborhood Association Board decided to move forward anyway. So is this the process you want to be used to designate historic resources in the city? No other state does this. Portland didn't
please
used
just
to.
wrap up.
Yeah.
Do you have written testimony you want to submit for the record?
Yes, I will submit this to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And does it include your suggestions about what we can do about it if it's at a national level? How could the council affect it?
The linkage between local land use happens at the level of the state of Oregon, so it requires discussion with the legislature. I believe it was an unintended consequence of an actual attempt by the legislature to make sure that groups were not placed in a historic district against their will. They provided an exception for the national service because it's meant to be honorary, and there are some grants that can come with it.
So we need to work with the legislature.
Yes, but the City Council now has, through Goal 5, an option to manage the process after a new designation is made. And I think that certain things are required and certain things the city can develop if it chooses to. So I'd be happy to submit that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Carla, would you please read Council Item 376?
Request of Kevin Fitz to address council regarding city review of home forward contracts with a Home for Everyone and intergovernmental agreements with the city.
Mr. Fitz, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Council. My name is Kevin Fitz. I'm a volunteer for an organization called the Oregon Mental Health Consumer Association. We don't have a budget. We're all volunteer groups, so no one is paying me as a lobbyist. I also want to say, just for conflict of interest, I'm also a member of the... Was that not on? I'm also a member of the Home for Everyone Coordinating Council and on the Unity Psychiatric Crisis Advisory Board. So just to put that out there, but I don't speak for them. I was going to talk, like it said in the agenda, about some home forward relationship with... I just turned it off, moving it close to, sorry.
And we'll add some time back on because of the technical.
Okay.
Let's add another minute.
So I was gonna talk about some issues that I had with public housing and city and county bureaucracy's relationship to their municipal corporations, their public housing authorities, but my Windows machine died last night. So I'm gonna pinch hit. This morning on my way down from Southeast Portland, I bumped into Mark Jolin, the head of a Home for Everyone, and Sheriff Chief Reese. And then down here in the Pearl District, I ran into Homer Williams, so it's been a busy morning. Here is the issue and it was kind of serendipitous that this came to me because I was talking to these three gentlemen about it. The Mercury did a piece on Portland's homeless situation, yada, 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 about WAPTO and that sort of thing. And it's an encouraging discussion wherever you fall on whether you want an institution 20 miles outside of Portland, isolated from services and 400 people all living on top of each other, or you want to put them in permanent housing with vouchers and supportive services. Wherever you fall in that discussion, I'm not here to make that argument. But I do want to make the argument about and just for self-identification, I'm a person who is a recovering alcoholic, recovering addict, recovering recipient of your criminal justice system, and have lived with the diagnosis of schizophrenia for 25 years and a 4-time suicide survivor. So here's the thing, when I was looking at this article that was talking about this issue, so Homer Williams is quoted saying this: first thing you want to do is stabilize the homeless, and then you can start to make long-term plans. And then after that, he goes on to say that Williams says investing in permanent housing isn't a practical solution right now, because what you need to do first is to stabilize the homeless. And having been a person who's been homeless in transitional housing and shelters and living in 82nd Avenue motels, I just find this language about what we need to do to these people offensive. as a person of service recipient. And stabilize, euthanize, sterilize, that kind of language makes me uncomfortable from a service recipient about what your benevolent paternalism, what you need to do to me, a user of your system, seems offensive and gets my fear up. I thought we're trying to make therapeutic bonds with your social service agencies and users of your systems. And that kind of language, I think, is aggressive and makes me uncomfortable. So thank you.
Homer Williams is not on city council, nor does he speak for the city of
True.
Portland.
That's true. True.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin, very
Thank
much
you.
for joining us.
That was really helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Carla, would you please call item number 377?
Request of Alan Kessler to address council regarding impediments to affordable housing.
Welcome, Alan. Do you have a PowerPoint?
I do, thanks.
Okay, so why don't you take a second to make sure that's up and running? We won't charge you with that time. It's actually a
Yeah.
minor miracle that it's up and running, so good for you.
Oh, there it is.
Okay.
I
Go
saw
ahead.
one of these and I see this on the clock. Which one do I have?
You have 3 minutes starting
Okay,
now.
thank you. My name's Alan Kessler. I'm here to talk about the Historic Landmarks Commission, specifically a project that's at 18th and Hoyt. It's been through 3 design review sessions now. It's an affordable building in the Alphabet District. This is an area where Commissioner Saltzman actually proposed the amendment that retained the 4-to-1 zoning in their most recent comp plan. It's zoned 4-to-1.
So, could I just interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
Is this going to be coming to council on appeal?
I hope so.
Well,
This
then
is
could I just check with the city attorney? Are we allowed to hear about it in a?
so. It's right now. It's in design review. There's been no.
I would assume the purpose is to allow anybody to come and talk during these communications, and that you're not taking testimony. You're allowing someone to address council.
And there's no pending land use matter, so I think it
Okay.
falls in that gray area, but I'm glad that Commissioner Fritz flagged that.
Thank you.
If at some point this does become well, this won't be charged against your time, Alan, but if this does at some point become a land use appeal, this may very well be a ex parte communication that has to be disclosed.
Okay.
And we would enter it into the record at that point.
Put it in the record, so.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So it's a 4-to-1 base. There's a 1-to-1 affordable housing bonus, but the developer doesn't feel like he can use that. This is what he said. So the reason I'm here is to talk about who's providing that feedback to affordable housing developers that they can't use the zoning that council is giving them. The first proposal came in for 164 affordable units. 49 were deeply affordable for seniors. 115 were affordable below 60% MFI. If they'd used a full 5-to-1, they probably could have gotten 60 more units, which is worth about $20 million in public benefit that the developer didn't even try for. This is a response to the first DAR. You can read about Commissioner Chung in the Oregonian. She actually lives within the developer shadow study and decided to go and preside over that DAR. The second proposal came back, so they spent another month. They came back with 16 fewer units, 1 fewer deeply affordable and 15 fewer affordable homes. So we lost about $5 million worth of public benefit based on that feedback from the Historic Landmarks Commission. Here was the feedback at the second DAR. That's a shame. This is the best quote. First one was Commissioner Roman asking whether we want to subject these people to the indignity of living in an inferior building and cramming people in. And then Commissioner Chung chuckling as she says that affordable housing isn't within the HLC's purview. Then we got to the third proposal. They didn't cut any units here, and we got similar feedback. I wish the audio worked. So Commissioner Mahoney talking about the footprint not being so bad as long as height is reduced, and then Commissioner Roman again saying that he doesn't care about affordable, at least he doesn't care about in the context of the Historic Landmark Commission's mission. So I think this is the wrong attitude, and I think you have a commission that's making decisions that you probably never would know about. They cut 60 units and they cut 16 units, and then someday maybe this will get to you on appeal, but by then the damage has been done. We have a nonprofit who wants to build hundreds of affordable units in our neighborhoods, and the Historic Landmark Commission is taking this extremely protective, myopic view that doesn't consider the value that affordable housing would bring to the city.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the PowerPoint handout.
And to be clear, that the Historic Landmarks Commission is required to make its decisions based on the approval criteria in the code. So the correct way to deal with this would be to change the code.
I agree. I think the commission should make it explicit that zoning isn't up for debate at the HLC, like it's not up for debate at the Design Commission. I'd also say that that commission doesn't balk when they're talking about parking. They're more than happy to talk about parking and loading zones, which aren't really in their purview either. They just don't want to talk about affordable housing because I guess they don't like that. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Carla, would you please read Council Item 378?
A request of David Keith Davis to address council regarding city-sponsored political terrorism, suppression of First Amendment rights of protesters, citizens, cop watchers, citizen journalists, whistleblowers, and activists.
Mr. Davis.
So, a lot of this has to do with you, Nick Fish, and how you're supposedly this constitutional lawyer, yet you're okay with your staff members coming out in my face and falsely accusing me of being a sex offender. My name is David Keith Davis, 6/30/1970. Anyone can Google my criminal arrest record, look into it. I have none of those charges. So you have your little goons come and falsely accuse me of stuff when you're actually the one who collaborates and hangs out with sex offenders.
Mr. Davis, you can
hang
say,
out
Mr.
with
Davis,
Terry Bean.
you'll suspend your comments. You can say whatever you want about a sitting commissioner. You are not allowed to take.
Yes,
to,
I
Mr.
am
Davis, do
allowed
not
to
interrupt
talk
me.
about whatever
You
I
are not
want.
allowed to go after city employees who have obtained restraining orders against you for your conduct. You will not use this
No.
platform to retaliate
No,
against public
no.
employees. And if you do, I will rule you out of
So
order.
here's a article that I got published in the Willamette Week right here about you and how you, along with Ellen Rosenblum, get money from a child rapist, Terry Bean. I know Dan
Mr. Davis,
Saltzman,
you are not entitled to come here and make
get
false
money, too.
allegations against citizens, and we will not be tolerated in this forum. You do not have that privilege.
You are on record as someone who's got money from Terry Bean, and we all know about all his accusations. Anyone can Google the name. You totally sidestepped all the questions that the Willamette Week gave to you, asking you about your conflict of interest getting money from a sex abuser that rapes kids.
So, Mr. Davis, you are not privileged to
You
defame citizens in this forum by
Terry
making
Bean
false
has been a
statements.
national leader in the struggle for LGBT rights. He is supporting me because of my leadership on marriage equality and transgender rights. Give me a break. Why don't you just answer their question, you know? And here's a quote from your playbook, okay? Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi head honcho propaganda guy. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The lie can be maintained only for such time as the state can shield people from the political, economic, and/or military consequences of the lie. It thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all its powers to repress dissent, for the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus, by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state. So you and your little staff advisors use stuff straight out of the Nazi playbook, where you accuse the other side of which you are guilty.
Mr. Davis, your time is up. Thank you
guilty.
very much. Carla, would you please call? Thank you very much,
Hang out
Mr.
with
Davis. Your
child
time is
rapists, you
up.
know it.
Your time is up. You're being disruptive, and if you continue to talk, you'll be removed. Carla, would you please call item number 379?
Request of Christopher Ryan to address council regarding some things to talk about.
Mr. Davis, take your seat, please. Is Mr. Ryan here? Well, if he comes a little bit later, we'll try to move on. Thank you very much. Colleagues, let's turn to the consent agenda. Carla, have any items been pulled?
Yes, we had 387. The mayor requested that be rescheduled to next week.
Without objection?
Can we read the title?
Why don't you read the title and reschedule
Okay,
it?
387, authorize a lease with Bristol Urban LLC for warehouse space at 935 Northeast 24th Avenue through April 30, 2020, at an average annual cost of $36,600 for the storage and retrieval of personal property collected during campsite cleanups on City of Portland property.
Without objection, we can send it over. So without objection, we'll set that over for next week. We're waiting for Commissioner Udaly to come back. So Carla, we're going to hold the vote. Is that the only item that's been pulled?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Davis, that's the second time you've tried to disrupt the hearing. If you do it again, you'll be asked to leave.
I'm actually going to leave because I can't.
Mr. Davis, you are now disrupting the meeting, and you will be asked to leave.
I'm actually leaving already, like I just said. You understand English?
So Carla, we'll hold off on the vote until
Okay.
Commissioner Udaly comes back. Why don't we, is that her?
Here she's coming.
Here she is. She has a flair for the dramatic. So we're going to vote on the consent agenda.
Great.
Carla, please call the roll.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye. We now move to two time certains. The first one is Council Item 380. Carla, would you please read the title?
Reauthorize Environmental Services Tree Bait Program to incent residential yard tree planting to contribute to Portland's stormwater management, clean river, and community livability goals.
Colleagues, the Bureau of Environmental Services invests in green infrastructure to manage stormwater and to protect the health of Portland's watersheds. Trees are essential to the Bureau's green infrastructure investments, and they deliver significant, cost-effective stormwater management benefits to the city and to our ratepayers. The Portland City Council first launched the Tree Bait program almost 9 years ago. The program provides a modest incentive to Portlanders to plant trees in their residential yards. I would like to invite Jennifer Karps, Tree Program Coordinator for the Bureau of Environmental Services, to give a brief presentation. And she will be followed by a panel of invited testimony, including Whitney Dorer, Deputy Director, Friends of Trees, Ted Labby, Policy and Program Director, Urban Green Spaces Initiative, and Twee Tu, Urban Forestry Commissioner Member. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Commissioner Fish, and thank you, Commissioners, for having me today. I'm excited to come to Council in April, which, as you know, is Arbor Month. Just a shameless plug for Arbor Month there. But today we're here to talk about our Tree Bait program, which the authorization for expires at the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, and we're here to request reauthorization. So the Environmental Services Bureau, a little bit of background about BES, is the Stormwater and Sewer Management Bureau. So we are charged with making sure that our surface waters are clean, and we do that. There's a little picture story up on the screen here. We do that through investment in both gray infrastructure and green infrastructure to help to manage both sanitary, sewage, and stormwater, and to keep our rivers clean and keep our communities healthy and vibrant through the both the gray and green investments that we make. As you know, Portland gets about 37 inches of rain a year. It may seem like more like 137 sometimes, but it's roughly 37 inches, and that generates a lot of stormwater because of all of the impervious surfaces, the buildings and roads that we have built as we've urbanized. So as I mentioned, we have a complex suite of gray and green infrastructure that we use to manage that stormwater and keep our residents safe. We use pipes and pump stations quite exhaustively, but at the surface, we have a lot of exciting treatments that we use as well. For my part, we are in the tree planting and tree investment business. The Bureau also invests in bioswales, rain gardens, eco-roofs, and other sorts of green infrastructure that help to manage stormwater more naturally, but also provide a suite of complementary benefits, improving air quality. There's been a lot of data lately, particularly about the human health benefits of trees, not just in terms of well-being and just sort of feeling good to be around trees, but also that trees are actually conferring us health benefits, that we might live longer and be less inclined to die from respiratory ailments. So to get to the TreeBait program, TreeBait began in 2009, was funded at first with under the Gray to Green initiative, which occurred from 2008 to 2013, and it was a significant investment over and above what the city had been doing in green infrastructure to try to catch us up with the level of development that had occurred in the city, and again, manage stormwater more naturally and improve the health of our communities. So the TreeBait program, among other programs that the Bureau runs, helps us to meet our stormwater management goals. It helps the city to meet its tree canopy cover goals, which, as you know, our hope is to get to 33% tree canopy cover by 2030. And then also to improve community livability. And our tree planting programs do that in a number of ways, not just with the benefits that the trees provide, but also that we involve a lot of community members in planting those trees, which I expect you'll hear from Whitney Dorr when she speaks. And the TreeBait program is fairly straightforward. This is one piece of a suite of programs that the Bureau of Environmental Services offers to get trees planted in the city. TreeBait is for the resident who wants to plant a tree on their property and goes out to a nursery, buys the tree, or perhaps hires someone to plant a tree. They can choose just about whatever tree species they like, as long as it's not on our nuisance plants list. And then they get a one-time credit on their utility bill against their on-site stormwater fee as a thank you from us that they're going to help us to manage that stormwater. The amount of the credit varies depending on how big the tree will be when it's mature. So a Douglas fir or an Oregon white oak, something that gets quite large, will get you half of what you paid for the tree, up to a maximum of $50. And if you plant a smaller tree, an apple tree, a dogwood, something like that, then you'll get half of what you paid to the tree, up to $15. And for the medium-sized trees, that maximum is $25. You go to the nursery or wherever you get your tree, you plant it, and then you fill in the application and send it to us with your proof of purchase. And then we give you that one-time credit, and it shows up on your utility bill as an adjustment. So it's a very elegant process. And then, of course, one of my favorite parts about TreeBait is that we partner with nurseries to help get the word out about our program. And there are a number of area nurseries. The image on the screen here is one of the A-frame signs that we have at a local nursery that advertises the TreeBait program. And we have found that our nursery partners are really engaged with the program, and they like to talk to customers about it. So since November of 2009, when the program started, we've served over 1,500 customers. We've given them over 3,000 of these TreeBait credits and spent about $70,000 in the process. So it's a very modest program. The average amount of the TreeBait is under $23 per tree. So relative to the other programs that we have, TreeBait is very modest, but it provides a nice ability for, if you want to do it your way, yourself, then you can participate in tree planting in the city. And I think it's interesting that we ask people to tell us where they bought their trees, because we want to make sure that we can reach out to those businesses and see if they want our outreach materials. And so far, 236 nurseries and landscape service providers have been involved in the TreeBait program. People have purchased their trees there, which we think is wonderful that we're able to help support these industries. Just briefly, the legislative history of TreeBait, as I mentioned, we started in 2009 for the 5-year term of the Gray to Green initiative. We came back to see you in 2013 and asked for another 5 years to run the program. In that time, we've been very happy with the program, and we would like to, our request today is to ask for your reauthorization on a permanent basis.
By the way, Jennifer, I have to say, I really appreciate that we're starting to include legislative history in these PowerPoints. We have 2 relatively new members of council. We'll have a new member of council next year. And many of the things that come to council do have significant legislative history. And I love the idea of a slide that walks through how we got here. So thank you for including that.
Absolutely. Thank you. So finally, the future of tree bait. We're excited to get the reauthorization and are looking toward the future to refresh the program to improve its accessibility to all residents of Portland. As I mentioned before, tree bait is one part of a suite of programs that the Bureau of Environmental Services offers. We have contracts with some landscape on-call contractors, and we use them to plant trees where it would be difficult or unsafe for volunteers to work. So with commercial, industrial, and multifamily partners generally. And then we have a contract with Friends of Trees, and they actually plant most of our trees for us. And I think I recognize some faces in the room and behind the bench up here, folks who have come out and planted trees with Friends of Trees. So you know what I'm talking about. So we're excited to improve accessibility to the tree bait program and to continue to work with our community partners to focus our efforts on low tree canopy, low income, and racially diverse communities. And thank you very much for your attention.
Colleagues, let's bring the panel up, and then we'll take questions for all of our participants.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. If Whitney Dorer, Ted Labby, and Twee Tu could please come forward. And thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. Commissioner Tu, let's start with you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here. This is probably the second time I've addressed you as an Urban Forestry Commissioner. My name, again, is Twee Tu. I am also an adjunct professor at the University of Portland and the University of Oregon, and I teach a course in resiliency planning. So a lot of what you will hear about and a lot of what the city is working on is what will ultimately go to the next generations of students. But today I'm here, again, on behalf of the Urban Forestry Commission, as well as a resident of East Portland, and representing the communities of the Jade District and beyond. It is our hope, and it is important, it's imperative, that the city continues to offer incentives to thank and also to acknowledge the stewardships of our residents for taking proactive actions in planting trees to help our city meet our 2050 100% renewable goals. In the case of the tree bait program, it helps the city meet those goals, such as the climate change preparation, stormwater management, and urban forestry canopy tree cover. As you may know, I do quite a bit of work with the Jade District, and the Jade District has been very influential in piloting some projects. And one of the favorite ones that have come to light was the Oregon Initiative project in greening the Jade. And so it's been very successful and a very community gathering opportunity, and also visioning out as to what we could do to help East Portland. So I don't have much else to say, but just to encourage that it is something that is very important with our community out in East Portland. Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us. I seem to recall we took up your nomination just a few months ago, and here you are with your first presentation, so thank you.
Thank you.
Ted, welcome.
Thanks. My name is Ted Labby, and I serve on the Portland Utility Board as a volunteer, but today I'm here representing the Urban Green Space Institute, and as an individual. I'm really happy to come out and support the extension of this program. I think it's a very important program that the city has, and I would encourage you to renew it. The city of Portland is losing large form trees, and there are precious few places in our right-of-ways to plant large and medium form trees. And a lot of residents now seem to be favoring small form trees in the right-of-way. So it makes this program of encouraging and incentivizing people to plant trees in their yards that much more important. Aside from the removal of unnecessary pavement, there's no better way than tree planting to address stormwater runoff and the urban heat island effect. And we know that trees have a multitude of community environmental benefits, so it's perfectly appropriate for the city to incentivize their planting in private yards with discounts on stormwater utility charges. With that said, I want to also take a minute to strongly encourage you to fully fund the Street Tree Task Force as part of the spring bump process. We need some new creative thinking about how to fund our street tree investments and that cannot happen without this new task force. So thanks again.
So Ted, I think we got an email from you. I've gotten a bunch of emails. This is just for the public to understand. This is a $100,000 ask that Commissioner Fritz is a strong supporter of in our budget modification process. And my understanding that will come back to council for a vote. So
great.
Thank you for being. Whitney, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm Whitney Dorr, Deputy Director at Friends of Trees, and as a long-term partner of BES, Friends of Trees is here today to support tree bait as an ongoing program that can be offered as a resource to City of Portland residents. As we are a group who plant over 2,400 trees, neighborhood trees in City of Portland each year, engaging thousands of residents, we also receive hundreds of calls that are tree related from community members each month, and we feel that this is a very complementary program to our work. The resource is so great for those residents who have missed their neighborhood plantings or are just interested in planting another tree in their private property and are eager to plant. It's important for residents to have opportunities like Tree Bait to engage in planting trees that benefit our community for years to come. This program also engages Portlanders in conversations about the importance of city trees, and the more we engage our communities in these issues, the better. Also, as a resident of North Portland, I frequent many local nurseries, and I've seen the wonderful signage that the Tree Bait program puts out. I feel like it's very approachable, and Friends of Trees often holds brochures at our outreach tables that are a great resource for our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you like to put a plug in for your annual luncheon?
Sure. May 9th. It's actually an evening event this year.
Excuse me. Evening.
Yeah, at Lagunitas from 6 to 8 p.m. May 9th. Check it out. It's on our website, or you could just email whitneyD@friendsoftrees.org, and I'll hook you up.
Colleagues, any questions for our distinguished panel? Thank you all very much. Carla, has anyone signed up to testify?
No one else signed up.
Okay, Lightning. And anyone else in the room that would like to testify? Joe Walsh, Mr. Walsh. I don't know whether this is in the record, but from fiscal year 2010 to fiscal year 2017, the total number of credits to customers was just under $70,000. So that gives you a sense of the cost to ratepayers. Lightning, welcome.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Creativity Watchdog. From my position, I'd like to discontinue this program. My reason being is that I don't think it should be a public utility program. I think it should be transferred over to Parks and Recreation. And it's my understanding Commissioner Fritz has already asked for an additional $100,000 possibly from the Parks and Recreation. So to me, I guess I'm not on the Public Utility Board, but it kind of just jumps out at me. And I'm just saying I want to have it transferred, discontinued, and transferred over to Parks. Now, another issue is my understanding on this program, you're averaging about possibly 400 to 450 trees per year, if I'm correct by my analysis. Again, I think that number's a little bit on the low side. And one of the concerns I have is using the term plant trees for clean rivers. Well, the Willamette River is so polluted, if you want to swim in it, you know, take your chances on it. So obviously in the past we've failed. And my question is that, as you know, on that glass company which determined that the trees were unhealthy, is that the reality is we have a lot of unhealthy trees. If you look along the river and you look at the trees themselves and the bark and how they're growing and different things like that, we've got a lot of unhealthy trees. And, you know, from my position is I want to have a clear understanding that when you're saying clean rivers, is that we don't have clean rivers. We have unhealthy trees. And, you know, from my position, you know, we need to really focus on this issue and understand that, do we have other type of methods that we can build houses from and not use trees? Do we have other ways that we can build commercial buildings and not use trees? Because now it seems like we're almost going back to wanting to use more wood, and we have certain projects, yes, use more wood and cut the trees down, but the reality is, if you look at the past on what we've done by cutting all these trees down, well, we've got seriously polluted rivers, we have unhealthy trees, and let me tell you something, we have a lot of unhealthy people in this city because of that, because of the air they breathe, because of the ways that we've cut these trees down. So, you know, we need to have some straight talk on this, is that exactly what are you doing to have clean air? Exactly what are you doing to cut down of some of these emissions from diesel, number one, and different type of cars and different things that are making our trees unhealthy? Because we've got a serious problem here. And I want to see more trees planted. And I want to see different type of building methods to where we don't have to cut these trees down, and we take it serious and say, we don't want to cut these trees down to begin with. So that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you, Lightning. Mr. Walsh, welcome.
Good morning. My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. We fully support this. We think it shows the better part of our nature, that we take care of the trees and we take care of the rivers. We have to do those kinds of things. And as long as we keep building with concrete, we're going to build ourselves into a major problem. We all know that. So if we have programs that perpetuate nature and bring it close to the urban area, we see that as a good thing. The second point is, and that's an unconditional support, by the way. Second thing is to remind the presiding official that the PowerPoints were, again, very difficult to read. So we had this running battle that the message below the presentation is not good enough. It leaves the people out that have visual impairments a part of the presentation. And I'm going to call you on this a lot. Because sooner or later, and I know this is going to take a while for everybody to get on board, if you present a power board or a power display, please, if you're listening, take into consideration us older folks that really want to read everything that's up there. We want to know what's going on. And if you make the print too small and we can't read it, we don't have a clue of what you're talking about. So once again, it's a technical criticism. It's not personal. It's a running problem that we've had for years, and I hope to live to see it resolve.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
Sure.
This is a first reading of an ordinance. It'll go to a second reading next week. Jennifer, thank you, and thank you for our distinguished panelists for joining us. Our next time certain is very timely, so Carla, would you please read Council Item 381?
Proclaim April 2018 to be Portland Metro Fire Camp Month.
Commissioner Dan Saltzman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. Today we are here to celebrate 10 successful years of Portland Metro Fire Camp for young women, and to talk about its growing popularity and demand, evident by its expansion this year with a second session being hosted by Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. So I'd like to invite up the presidents of the Metro Fire Camp, Portland firefighter Liz Thompson and recruiter Irene Concepcion Sestrick, as well as Portland Fire Chief Mike Myers, and they'll talk a little bit. I also want to thank Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue's Chief Mike Dyke for being here with us today as well. And after they present, we can read the proclamation and take a picture with all the great firefighters we have in the room.
Well, good
Chief,
morning.
welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Mike Myers, a Fire Chief for the City of Portland. To my right is firefighter Liz Thompson. She's a firefighter with Portland Fire and Rescue. And then to her right, firefighter Irene Concepcion Sestrick, also a firefighter with Portland Fire and Rescue. And thank you for recognizing some young women in the audience that are also firefighters with Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue that have joined us here today. Tualatin Valley is always a fantastic partner with us for public safety in the Valley, and we appreciate them being with us here today. I'm going to turn this over to Liz and Irene to talk about the Portland Metro Area Fire Camp for Young Women. So thank you for having us today.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Again, I'm firefighter Liz Thompson. We have a video that shows fire camp, I believe.
Oh, boy.
Nice to see the partnership you have with Bureau of Environmental Services.
I picked the wrong seat.
Sorry, I thought you were going to play it for you.
Carla, thank you for your help.
Go ahead.
You're welcome.
They may drive, fly, thinking about what kind of tools they use. These professionals are going to be coming here in real life after we draw these pictures.
My friend Cohen's hair is blonde and actually kind of hair. This Cohen boy? Yeah.
What a great doctor. Finishing touches time to everybody who's at a desk. I was thinking that it might be fun to actually meet real live professionals that have these jobs. Well, what do you know? They're walking in right now, everybody. Welcome. We're going to go ahead and let the professionals have a minute to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Mercy. I'm a carpenter and I build homes.
Hi, my name is Kim, and I'm a fighter pilot.
Hello, I'm Diane, and I'm an emergency doctor.
Hi, I'm Liz. I'm a firefighter with Portland Fire and Rescue.
Are there more dads than there are moms that have heart attacks? Yeah, but you know, you can do any job that you want. So if someone's having trouble breathing, you put that over their nose, you plug this in, and there's lots of oxygen that helps them breathe better.
So does anybody know the tools that we're passing around today? What tools are you guys holding?
So these right here are the straps that come with right here. Strap it like that.
So really important for us to leave here today knowing more than ever that no matter who you are, every job is open to you.
I'll give you a little background on the video. That was a project of mine and my acquaintance, ER Dr. Diane West. We started the conversation, as we have, about starting fire camp, why the seed isn't planted in young individuals, that they can do any career that's possible for them. So that was our baby, our labor of love. So I'm really happy that it's being shown here today, and thank you for your time for that. Thank you for the opportunity to highlight the 10-year anniversary of Portland Metro Fire Camp as well. It, again, is the result of conversations with Portland firefighters, female firefighters, about why we didn't think of this career at a young age and how we can change the course. Over a decade ago, our own Lisa Knight assisted with Camp Blaze in Washington, which was at the time the only fire service related camp for young girls. And she brought that model back to us, and we were supported in creating our own for that. 10 years later, we've mentored over 300 young women from camp, and they've have succeeded to become firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, nurses, a helicopter mechanic. They've pursued passions for law enforcement, served in the Coast Guard, and became a volunteer firefighter that started their own cadet program in her own department in our hometown. So Portland Metro Fire Camp has become a model for development of other camps in Bend Fire Department, in Lebanon, Lacey, LA City, Salt Lake City, and Atlanta, Georgia have reached out to us to find out what we're doing, how we're succeeding, and taking that back to their fire department as well. And it's also sparked the flame for our friends at Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue to contribute and have a bigger step in this goal. Our mission statement includes empowerment, so young women have the confidence to pursue not only fire careers, but non-traditional careers as well, and they also have the tools and the skill set to force open those glass doors and ceilings. To conclude my part, the following statement is from a previous camper. I can't express how grateful I am to have spent 3 days with female firefighters who showed me what it really means to work as a team. I was horribly nervous on day 1, almost to the point where I did not want to return day 2. My body ached all over the place from lifting such heavy objects. I've never seen so many strong women with such positive attitudes in one place. And if I could thank every counselor for encouraging me to be fearless in whatever career I choose, I would. And I think that's the greatest impact. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Irene?
Yes, please. This should take about 90 seconds. So good morning, commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to acknowledge the 10-year anniversary of Portland Metro Fire Camp. As you can see by those present behind us, Portland Metro Fire Camp is an outreach program that is not limited to our city. Present today are current and past counselors, previous fire campers, and Portland firefighter Kaylee Cullen, who attended Portland Metro Fire Camp in 2009. The success of this camp has everything to do with the women behind me and many other women who were unable to attend. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge and express our heartfelt gratitude to the departments and the fire chiefs who support their female firefighters, and often their one and only female firefighter, to instruct at this 3-day camp. This collaborative effort comes from the professional female firefighters from Oregon, including Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, Salem, Clackamas, Albany, Lebanon, Bend, Sun River, Port of Portland, Hillsborough, Medford, and our neighbors to the north, Camas, Washougal, Tacoma, Raymond, Lacey, Snohomish, and Vancouver, and as far south as LA City. Every year, these women commit to traveling to Portland to instruct and to be role models and mentors for the young campers. Our intentions with this camp is to give young girls a place to feel challenged, to experience fear with the attempt of something new, and equally as important, to feel a sense of accomplishment and empowerment. These skills are not unique to the fire service. These skills are applicable to any career they decide to choose. We continue to support and mentor the campers years after they attend. During camp and for weeks after camp, there's a general feeling that the wind is at our backs. And hopefully that we've impacted the young females, the female campers in some capacity. Though there's hard work months in advance to prepare for fire camp, the true courage starts after the completion of camp, when each one of the professional female firefighters returns to their department, inspired and empowered, and choose to have difficult conversations with their administration on their recruitment efforts and their outreach efforts on how they're diversifying their workforce. These are not always easy discussions to have, and oftentimes these women are the only females in their department. These are the women that are moving the marker. Our ask of you today is that the City of Portland continues to support Portland Metro Fire Camp and to proudly accept that we are obligated to be vanguards in outreach, recruiting, and preparatory programs in the fire service. I believe it is our obligation to educate all women, all men, that a career in the fire service could be their calling. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And maybe you could just tell people who might be watching this how they go about if they have a young girl or her family wants to get involved in the fire camp. Who do they contact? What do they need, and when is the camp?
We have our camp at the Portland location will be July 13th to the 15th, and the Sherwood location, which is hosted by Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, is August 10th through the 12th. Our applications are online at the City of Portland and /fire, portlandoregon.gov on our website. So
Is it still?
it's a banner, and the application
still open?
Yes, the application deadline is June 10th, and we will take approximately 50 campers for the July camp and about 35 campers for the August camp.
Great. Well, thank you, and we accept your challenges, Irene, as Fire Commissioner. I accept those. And I'd like to read the proclamation, and maybe we can do a picture.
Could I just ask a question, please?
Oh, sure.
Commissioner, what we're going to do is have the proclamation, then take questions, and then a picture.
Okay. I'll be reading this on behalf of Mayor Wheeler. Whereas 10 years ago, a group of female firefighters from Portland Fire and Rescue created a concept to introduce young women to a career in the fire service, a camp that teaches hands-on skills instructed by local female firefighters. And whereas Portland Fire and Rescue supported this plan and hosted the free 3-day camp at its training grounds, and whereas the group recruited female firefighters from the area and dubbed the camp Portland Metro Fire Camp to reflect the broad support from our local agencies, and whereas the first camp instructed 14 young women and grew to almost 40 young women each year, introducing hundreds of women to the fire service and empowering each to confidently find their own path, with multitudes going into fire careers across Oregon and the nation, including one hired by Portland Fire and Rescue. And whereas now in its 10th year, Portland Metro Fire Camp is expanding to meet its growing demand by opening a second session hosted by Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. And whereas applications are now open for the 2018 camp, and we encourage all interested young women to apply on our website. Now therefore I, Ted Wheeler, the Mayor of the City of Portland, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim April 2018 to be Portland Metro Fire Camp Month in Portland, and encourage all residents to observe this month.
We're going to, in a moment, we'll take a picture, but first comments or questions from my colleagues. Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, President Fish. I noticed that you used the word individual and girl interchangeably when you were making the presentation. Is this like the Girl Scouts, where anybody who identifies as a girl or female is welcome to participate?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's correct.
Fabulous, thank you.
Commissioner Udaley.
Thank you. So thank you for being here today, and thank you for the video, which was adorable, but also a little disappointing, to be honest. I was born in 1970. I grew up in the era of free to be you and me. I grew up in a family that did their best not to enforce gender stereotypes or roles on me. And when I was the age of those kids, I wanted to be a doctor, an artist, and a zookeeper simultaneously, which I think perhaps I have now achieved in my role as commissioner, which, by the way, is
Can I rule that statement out of order, Carla? I don't know whether...
which is also a male-dominated field, which President Fish just demonstrated by interrupting me. So it's disappointing that children still envision men in all of these roles, and And so thank you for your efforts. Thank you to to Portland Fire and Rescue and the Portland Metro Fire Camp for their decade of work educating young women in firefighting skills. The fire camp has introduced hundreds of women to this vital career path in an industry historically dominated by men. Despite this ongoing fact, women have been fighting fire in the United States for over 200 years. The first woman firefighter we know of was Molly Williams, a slave in New York City who became a member of the Oceanus Engine Company No. 11 in about 1815. The first all-woman forest firefighting crew in California was assembled in 1942, and the first female fire chief was right here in Oregon. Ruth E. Capello was named chief of the Butte Falls Fire Department in 1973. So I'm very pleased that we are continuing to build on the tradition of female firefighters and encourage women in our community to seek out this vital profession. Congratulations, and thank you for your service.
And if I might
Thank you
just
very much.
add to that very eloquent history, I can't let this go past without thanking former Fire Chief Erin Janssens for her leadership here in the City of Portland and her support of this program. It was really fabulous for a long time that the mayor was able to go to places and talk about all of the women in leadership in our community, and you have quite the legacy to carry on, Chief Myers, and I'm glad that you're doing that.
Chief, I have one question, and then we'll take a picture. If someone's watching this and they're interested in a career in firefighting, how do they apply to become a firefighter, and how long does it take to get the training you need to actually become a firefighter?
Well, I think that's an excellent question, because our recruiter is actually sitting 2 chairs down to my right, and that is Irene Concepcion Sestrick. So we actually have, Commissioner, a full-time recruiter with us. Irene does a tremendous amount of work making sure individuals out there are, know that we have a program here, that firefighting is available to them. And Irene, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about how we do that?
You bet. So your question is, how do they apply and what does the training look like?
Yeah.
So historically, our application, we will draw in about 4,000 people for a dozen positions here in the city of Portland. And though that seems initially rather flattering, what we're really trying to do is capture qualified candidates that will move through our process. And so what that application period process looks like, it's an online application. They'll go through 3 to 4 months through a testing process. And then our training academy currently is 12 months long.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much. Shall we take a picture?
Yeah, why don't we all get up
We
to
can
the front
invite
here?
our other guests to join us.
Yeah.
Particularly our friends from Tualatin Valley. We haven't had this many photographers for an event and since I've been on council. This is quite remarkable. I will stop this so you know. Yeah.
Say fire, 1, 2, 3. Fire.
1, 2, 3.
No, I was like, don't somebody left a hat.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you. Good job. Thank you, Chief. Chief Myers, thank you.
Yeah, really good. Thank you very much.
Okay. So we've now concluded our time certains, and we're moving to our regular agenda. Carla, would you please call council item 389?
Accept bid of Stetler Supply Company for the Fremont Pump Station Upgrade Project for $1,256,845.
Colleagues, this is a, Larry, why don't you come forward? This is a procurement report on a competitively bid project for the Bureau of Environmental Services to upgrade the Fremont Pump Station and provide long-term reliability to its wastewater collection system. I'd like to introduce Larry Palat, Interim Chief Procurement Officer, and I guess Scott Gibson is not here. So, Larry, why don't you take it away?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Commissioners. You have before you the procurement report.
Larry, turn your mic on.
Award to Stetler Supply Company. Oh, thanks, Mustafa. Well, I have a big mouth. You can hear me anyway. The Fremont Pump Station Upgrade Project in the amount of $1,256,845. The engineer's estimate on the project was $1,440,000, and the Bureau's confidence level in that was high. On November 8, 2017, Council approved ordinance number 188675 for the procurement services to competitively solicit the Fremont Pump Station. The project was advertised in the city's electronic procurement system, and bids were opened February 22nd, 2018. 3 bids were received, and Stetler Supply Company is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder at $1,256,845, which is 14.2% under the engineer's estimate. I don't have to remind the council that when we're under, this is a good thing. The Portland Bureau of Environmental Services, along with procurement services, identified an aspirational goal for certified, disadvantaged, minority, women-owned, and emerging small business enterprises, subcontract supplier utilization at 20% of the hard construction costs. This is a relatively specialized project. There is a total of $38,861, which is only 3.1% of DMW ESB subcontractor participation. Portioned as follows: a DBE $4,960 doing saw cutting, core drilling, WBE tree at $5,875 tree protection, and an emerging small business at $28,026 with plumbing, insulation, and scaffolding. Stetler Supply Company is located in Salem, Oregon. They are not a state-certified DMW ESB contractor. They do have a current City of Portland business tax registration and their EEO certification, and they are in full compliance with the city's contracting requirements. Council has any questions relative to the bidding process? I can answer those. I don't have anybody from BES, but I have the contractor here if there are questions relative to any other part of the presentation.
Thank you very much. Colleagues? Okay. No questions. Carla, did anyone sign up to testify?
This is a report.
Oh, excuse me. This is a report? No. So I'll accept a motion to accept the report.
Move to accept the report.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Carla, please call the roll.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Fritz?
Thank you, Julie. Aye.
Fish?
Aye. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
And the report is adopted. Our next item is council item number 390.
Accept bid of Wildish Standard Paving Company for the Foster Road Streetscape Southeast 50th to Southeast 92nd Avenue project for $5,091,419.
We welcome back Interim Chief Procurement Officer Larry Palat. Larry?
Didn't even get to move very far. Good morning, Commissioners. You have before you the procurement report recommending a contract award to Wildish Standard Paving for the Foster Road Streetscape Southeast 50th to the Southeast 92nd Avenue project, $5,091,418.52. The engineer's estimate of this project was $6,569,285.83. The Bureau's confidence level was moderate. On December 6th, Council approved ordinance number 188705 for procurement services to competitively solicit this project. The project was advertised on the city's electronic procurement system. Bids were opened on March 8th. 4 bids were received in response, and Wildish Standard Paving is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder at $5,091,418.52. This is $1,504,418.83 under the engineer's estimate. This is really, really good. I didn't, again, I don't need to remind the council if we're saving money over our engineer's estimate. This is good for us, and it's not common today. This project is a federally funded highway project, and as such, the city's standard goal of 20% participation by disadvantaged minority women, emerging small businesses participation is not applicable. Federal projects recognize the DBE, or Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Certification only. The Oregon Department of Transportation, as the grantor or manager of the federal funds projects, assigns a goal to the project for DBE enterprises. This project had a goal of 15%, which is higher than most city projects get. We've been asking, PBOT's been asking for a long time for higher goals, and it's starting to have a good effect. So PBOT's been working very hard at this. Wildly Standard Paving has committed to a 15.12%, slightly over the DBE participation goals. There's a total of $789,822 of committed DBE subcontractor participation for the project, and an additional $111,200 to state-certified MWE firms, which is not calculated in the participation goal. Wildly Standard Paving is located in Eugene, Oregon. They are not a state-certified contractor. They do have City of Portland business tax registration and are in full compliance with the city's contracting requirements. If the council has any questions regarding the bidding process, I can answer those, and okay. We do have somebody from PBOT if we need to.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Platt. Colleagues? No questions? Carla, has anyone signed up to testify?
This is a report.
That's right, thank you. If you say that, if you keep saying that enough, I'll probably sink in at some point, so thank you. It's a report, we don't take testimony. Carla, would...
Move to accept the report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Would you please call the roll?
Saltzman.
Well, this is pretty impressive for the bid coming in way below the engineer's estimate. So
yes, sir, they are.
Hopefully that's a trend that will hold up.
Yeah, let's hope so.
2 for 2 today. Okay. Aye.
Fritz.
It could actually be a bit worrying. Maybe it shows that the construction boom is starting to fade. And but anyway, it does pencil out better for the taxpayers right now. Aye.
Fish.
Aye. It passes. Thank you very much. Carla, we're going to need 4 members of council to act on council item 391. So as we wait for Chloe to rejoin us, if you don't mind, colleagues, I'd like to dispense with the second readings, and then we'll come back to that item. So if you could read council item number 392.
392, authorize price agreements with CH2M Hill Engineers, Inc., Kennedy Jenks Consultants, Inc., Murray Smith, Inc., and WSP USA, Inc. for professional engineering services for the continuation of large-scale sewer system rehabilitation program, pipe rehabilitation phase 3, and large diameter sewer rehabilitation for a total of $16 million.
Colleagues, this is a second reading, vote only. Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye. The ordinance passes. Carla, would you please read council item 394?
Assess benefited properties for street, sidewalk, sanitary sewer, stormwater, ornamental street lighting, and water main improvements in the Northeast 112th Avenue and Mark Street Local Improvement District.
This is a second reading, vote only. Carla, please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye. It passes. Carla, please read council item 395.
Vacate portions of Northeast Deering Drive and Northeast 112th Avenue and Northeast 111th Avenue, subject to certain conditions and reservations.
This is a second reading, vote only. Carla, please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Fritz.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Commissioner Saltzman, Matt Graham, and Carl Aruda for your work on this project. Also, Janine Gates in my office. A lot of hard work getting the easements, the access to the Columbia Slough. It was great to see community members here in support of this last week, and it's a long project that's getting done thanks to Andrew Abbey and various others who are involved in the larger project. Aye.
Fish.
Ditto. Aye. It passes. Carla, please read council item. Did we just do 396?
No, we did
Or no,
5.
if you could read Council Item 396.
Vacate portions of Northeast 112th Avenue, south of Northeast Deering Drive, subject to certain conditions and reservations.
This is a second reading, vote only. Carla, please call the roll.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye, the ordinance passes. So we have 2 items left. Carla, let's go back to Council Item 391, and I have some talking points from there.
391, authorize a 5-year price agreement for purchase of furniture, accessories, and related services from New G LLC, doing business as HIMF, formerly known as Smith CFI, for an amount not to exceed $24,128,800.
Colleagues, the mayor has asked me to read the following talking points. On March 15th, 2017, City Council issued Resolution Number 37274, directing the Office of Management and Finance to implement a space optimization plan. The plan was to be intentional and strategic with the goal of creating similarity in design, flexibility, and utility of function throughout city bureaus. These will allow for flexibility between bureau spaces for fluctuations in personnel requirements and will significantly reduce costs over time. We are proposing to make this investment because it will result in savings of $25 million over the next 20 years by using the modern furniture and space configuration to reduce our need for additional office space. The city is financing these costs, and bureaus will pay the debt back through their rental rates. The resolution includes a financing directive for the first major purchase under these standards for the space optimization project to be utilized in the Portland building reconstruction. The estimated cost for the furniture component for the space optimization project in the Portland building is approximately $12,878,000. The city issued a notice of intent to award a price agreement to New G LLC DBA-Fen Services on February 2nd, 2018. No protests were received. Existing citywide furniture contracts will remain in place to purchase task chairs and to allow for small purchases in support of existing furniture systems until those contracts expire. At that time, furniture purchases shall be reassessed and may be added to this agreement. That is the preamble. Larry Palat is here to join us again. Larry, take it away.
Well, the preamble covered pretty much everything in the report. The ITB was 729. The project it was actually listed on September 26th in 2017. All the vending community was notified, including certified firms. 7 bids were received and opened on October 31st, 2017. 6 bids were determined to be responsive to the solicitation requirements, including all the requirements surrounding availability for product demonstration and sustainable manufacturing. The city had requirements around all pieces of relative to the climate action plan and to minimize the extent possible the city's carbon footprint, as well as other aspects of sustainable procurement. On February 2, 2018, the city issued a notice of intent to award a price agreement to New G company, formerly known as Smith CFI. No protests were received. The contract has been negotiated in the amount of $24,128,800. This is a price agreement that is a maximum spend, that is not a mandated minimum spend. The city's intent, as made clear to the vendors, is to use the price agreement to provide first for the move back into the Portland building, roughly in the amount of $12,878,000, and then to bring all city facilities into alignment with the product lines over the course of the agreement. This was a very strategic and intentional process to create a climate of homogeneous design and flexibility among all city facilities. While the process was undertaken at the same time as the Portland building reconstruction and was somewhat driven by that project, it was never part of that budget and was always intended to be a much more functional, inclusive agreement than what would be required to refurnish one building. The process was undertaken and managed by the city's Procurement Services Division. Extensive evaluation and demonstrations were performed, including product demonstrations and a review of the complete kit of parts, that's an industry term, that will eventually comprise the entire line of available product. The lines were evaluated for maximum utility, flexibility by a group of representatives of many city bureaus, community participants, including members of the city's Minority Evaluator Program. Since this is a goods contract, not a construction or goods and services contract, there is no specific aspirational goal for participation by disadvantaged minority women or emerging small business firms. Such firms were notified about the project when it was posted on the city's electronic procurement system, but no certified firms actually submitted proposals. This is a very large contract, might be a little too big for some of standard small business type firms. If subcontracting opportunities arise relative to installation, delivery, any assembly, the city would certainly aggressively pursue obtaining participation by certified firms. Participating bureaus will be budgeting for the projects to be purchased based on this agreement in the coming years as they are identified. The contractor is in compliance with all the city's contracting requirements, including business tax registration and payment. If the council has any questions concerning the solicitation or the resulting price agreement, I can answer those. If there are specific questions relative to individual bureau budgeting and how that will work and how it will be paid back in their rental rates, Aaron Beck is in the chamber to answer those questions. And if there are questions specific to the actual Portland building portion of this, Kristen Wells is in chambers to answer those.
I have some questions, but let's start with my colleagues. Colleagues, questions? Commissioner Fritz?
Was one of the criteria in the evaluation whether the furniture would be made locally?
Local participation was encouraged. The firm that has the successful firm has an assembly point here in the city. They have their kit of parts warehouse is outside of Olympia, Washington. So they are, to the extent possible, local, yes.
But that wasn't part of the scoring?
Not specifically, no.
Because I know that there are some furniture companies that operate in the metro area.
There certainly are. Not generally to the size required to furnish this entire sort of understanding that the variety and the wide use of by different bureaus, different assembly, different needs relative to bureau facilities means the firm has to have a pretty wide array of available products.
Yeah, I was thinking particularly of City Liquidators.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Thinking particularly of City Liquidators that has a lot of office furniture as well as desk couches, all those kinds of things, and they use local companies to the extent they can.
I think one of the pieces that we probably should keep in mind for this is, and then I'm just going to talk this one just a little bit about the Portland building. We moved about 1,400 people out of the building, but we're moving about 1,800 people back in. So looking at that from a standpoint of all of that furniture really needs to be flexible, but the same thing. The cube sizes and all those kinds of things. Local manufacturing would be problematic. I don't think it's a rule out, Commissioner. I think it's probably one of those things that there will be pieces and parts of this that will have to come together, small fill-in, that kind of stuff, and I think that local manufacturing would have a significant advantage there.
And, obviously I don't do a lot of massive purchases for 1,800 people. Is Nugi a company that is well known for doing this kind of thing? Actually,
Smith CFI is their former operating number has been in business since, I think their brochure said 1981. They're a very well-known national company, yes.
And is there any opportunity for encouraging them to use local firms to make some of their stuff?
Absolutely. For the fill-in piece, when we get to assembly and installation, delivery, all that kind of stuff, we will absolutely work towards that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So will all bureaus now be required to operate off of this contract for their furniture needs? Even regardless of if they're in the Portland building?
I think the term required I think strongly encouraged might be better. I know that it's a focused thought process to have homogeneous design, homogeneous installation, so you could literally move a work set from the interstate project into the Portland building. So that's the thought process. At this point, nothing that I'm aware of that bureaus have been told, everything you have you're going to throw away and we're going to replace it with this. The thought process, as we replace furniture, move people around, to redesign, rebuild facilities, we'll end up so we're all in the same boat.
Okay. So we are getting rid of everything that was in the Portland building. Is that right?
That's gone. That's already gone. Yes, that's been done. And
what was the
everything that
process?
were in the rental spaces was leased furniture. So all of the furniture that's in, for instance, the Congress Center stays there when we move out. We move back into a fully furnished building.
And tell folks at home what happened to all that furniture from the Portland building.
It was sold, donated or sold in some cases at auctions, donated to other governmental agencies or to nonprofits, and very little of it ended up in the landfill. I mean, some pieces obviously, but very little.
Do we know the total amount we got for it?
I do not.
Be
I
interested.
could certainly find out and have that information and send it to your office.
I'd be very interested to know. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Platt, I have a couple of questions. First, following up on Commissioner Fritz's point, I think that this question of how we structure these procurements to promote the buy local aspects is very important. And, you know, we had this conversation recently when Fleet needed to go out and buy vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
And the council made a clear stated preference for buying cars from dealers that are paying the business license fee and not and trying to equalize that, because obviously companies outside of Portland that don't pay that tax may be operating at a competitive advantage. So we have a clear record of support for sort of this concept of buy local. I understand the Commerce Clause has something to say about this, so we can't completely structure our rules to advantage local businesses, but I wonder whether we're going far enough. So it's a conversation I think this council is going to want to continue to have with procurement. The second question, though, has to do with just understanding how we came up with sort of guesstimates of what we needed and what the price would be. I mean, someone looking at this ordinance is going to say $24 million for furniture. That seems like a very big number. 12 million of it is going to go into the Portland building. You said 1,800 people are going back to the Portland building. I just used my phone to do some math. If you went off just those employees, and I understand there'll be furnishings for other purposes, you're looking at about $6,000 per employee. So what's the benchmark? How do we know that this is in the right ballpark in terms of cost, reasonable cost for things like furniture and modular items and other things?
Well, price was a significant part of the evaluation process. So basically what we got to was the low bidder. You know, it was a piece of it, so it was not the low bidder necessarily, but price was a significant part of the evaluation. So where we end up with is, as you said, we look at the total furnishing requirements, specifically here to the Portland building, how it's structured, where it goes in, it brings in conference rooms and conference tables and all of the additional accoutrements to cubes. Cubes aren't cheap. And nor should they be. What you want is functional capacity for employees to be there, work, do there, not have issues with their surroundings. And so $6,000 seems like a little bit high, I mean, just in my head also, but when we look at it and we say, well, we've got 1,800 people, they have X amount of requirements, the floors are going to look like this, so it's going to be essentially structured all the same. I don't know how to defend the cost of $6,000 per employee. I mean, it was looked at, managed, and designed in, and this is where it is. So like I said, I don't know how to defend that number.
Well, one of the ways that the Office of Management and Finance talks about this, and I know this just because I was given the mayor's talking points, which I read, is that if the question that we have to always ask is compared to what? So we're being asked to make an investment. What are the alternatives? And according to the Office of Management and Finance analysis, if we spend a little extra in creating a functional and attractive workplace where we can get more people over time in that workspace, it will significantly reduce our long-term costs in new space. And so that's one way that they look at it. Is that, would you care to comment on that?
Well, certainly, we have a significant property in the Portland building. We have lots of people tied up. That's not the right term. The 1900 building, and the city owns a lot of facilities and has business interests in lots of facilities. However, if what we can do is reduce the total lease space, the lease rates in the city of Portland have been going up, well, not just apartments and you know, but commercial lease spaces going up significantly. As we move out of lease spaces and move into our own facilities, as we bring more and more people in, the savings is significant.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful.
I have a question.
Commissioner?
You just mentioned a $6,000 per employee estimate?
That was math. That was math from Commissioner Fish.
I mean, but that would include common areas, conference room, you know, I just want to be clear for people listening, we're not talking about $6,000 for a small cubicle with a desk and a chair and a filing cabinet. This is...
Certainly correct,
yeah.
Commissioner.
Okay.
That is essentially refurnishing the entire building, all conference rooms, all of everything.
Yeah, I just took 1,800, divided it by the amount, and I know that there are going to be other public spaces and public areas. I'm just trying to get a ballpark. Maybe it's only $4,000 or $5,000, but the question is, how do we compare that to know whether it's reasonable? So, thank you, Mr. Palat. Carla, has anyone signed up to testify?
Yes, we have 2 people signed up, Joe Walsh and Mary Sipe.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Joe
you
and
very
Mary,
much.
why don't you come forward?
If you need me, I'll come
Thank
back.
you, yeah. Well.
Good morning. My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. I'm going to call this the Ben Carson caper. Ben Carson spent $31,000 for a table just like this. And everybody in the country went berserk because he was wasting money. And they couldn't figure out how in God's name you could spend $31,000 on one table. Well, folks, how in God's name can you spend $24 million on furniture? And Commissioner Fish, you brought up that the intent was $25 million for 25 years. But the documents say $24 million in 5 years. That's a big difference.
Joe, can I clarify what I said? I won't take it against your time, but...
No.
That's not what I said.
If you're asking me, no.
Okay.
You can do it later.
All right.
This is hysterical. 25, I thought it was a typo. I really did. And I said, and somebody even reaffirmed it when I walked in. They said, what are you going to do with the furniture in the Portland building? And I think that was asked. And I think it was answered that they're going to move it back. Or, no, we sold it. It's gone. So that means we have to replace it. And I don't think we're going to Goodwill. We're going to buy all new furniture. So let me put it to you this way. We have a building, the Portland building, that we got screwed on, that we're going to spend $100 million minimum fixing it up, and you're going to put new furniture in there to boot at a total of $12 million. If that doesn't cause pitchforks from the Portland people, I don't know what should be. I do have a request. I know you're going to vote for this. You're going to blow the money, not coming out of your wallet. You don't care. You're just going to rubber stamp it. These security guys need a chair downstairs. And the $12 million for the Portland building, would you get these guys a couple of chairs? They're all standing around. And they're old. They're not 20 guys. They need a chair. Like that chair there. That should cost you guys $200,000 the way you spend money. This is an outrageous amount of money for furniture. Thank you very much, Commissioner Fritz, for asking some really interesting questions. I had those questions also. I got a phone call last night that was so good. And they said, is that a typo? I said, no, it's not a typo. Carry on. Keep spending the money. However, a lot of one-termers sitting here.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mary, welcome.
Hi, Mary Sipe. Good afternoon. I'm very familiar with space planning. I've done it in my previous career for large organizations, and many of the questions that I had about this were answered, and I too appreciate the questions that Commissioner Fritz asked. You know, Ben Carson bought one piece of furniture for $31,000 for one office. This is furniture for 1,800 people that we're talking about. We're talking about furniture that has to last a long time. This type of furniture needs to be periodically broken down and reconfigured as you need more space for more people. And so it needs to be durable. It needs to stand up to being taken apart and put back together again and again and again. I've watched this happen over the years in places where I've worked, and I've been involved in this. I also have been involved in working with Smith CFI years ago. And just because they maybe aren't, quote, local, most of the companies that are local purchase their products from all over the place. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're getting something made in Oregon, let's say. It would be interesting to know how old was the furniture that was sold from the Portland building. And I can bet it was pretty old, and it was pretty big, and it was pretty inefficient. I think I completely support this from the documentation that I looked at and from the conversation here today. I think the due diligence has been done. It is a lot of money, but I think it's an investment. I think the fact that this type of space planning and this type of furniture will help to put more people in smaller spaces, but allow them to work efficiently and also comfortably and ergonomically. I think this is important. And what it does, if you stop and think about it, and this was stated, is that it's also going to result in saving money on leasing space. And so, you know, you've got to look at both sides of the coin on this. I know of one instance with the noise control office where their manager, the noise control officer, was in a building clear across town for like 1.5 years because of space issues. And it caused him great inefficiencies in his work because he wasted so much time traveling back and forth that he probably got half as much done in a day than what he was doing before. And now, thankfully, he's back here. Let's see here. Let me just see if I missed anything here. Looking at my notes. I think I covered it all, and I appreciate the work that's being done, and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, do you have any follow-up questions?
No, I just have a clarification, if I may.
Please.
Because it's actually $12,878,000 for the Portland building. So roughly half of this is for the Portland building. Right. So that's about $3,000 per employee, including their share of the community spaces. So at $3,000, that's a lot different from the $31,000 for the table of that happened at the national level. Also, approximately half of this contract is for environmental services and the Water Bureau, so it will be paid for through rates rather than by the general fund. So although the contract is with the company to provide all the furniture, some of it's being paid for by rates. And then the debt service, it's also being paid for with borrowed money. So there's $1,800,000 for debt service of the general fund portion and $1,169,000 for the utilities. So when you really start drilling down, if we're going to look at the numbers, it becomes much more reasonable. I also want to say that I assume that the mayor put this on the agenda and gave you extensive talking points because he's in support of this. So my vote will reflect the fact that the commissioner in charge of the Office of Management and Finance is supporting this and would vote for it if he were here.
If I could just respond to one point, and I've been having trouble with my phone, so I'm not going to vouch for the accuracy of anything. But I just took $12 million and divided it by 1,800, and I got $6,000. And that I didn't put that number out there in order to mislead or alarm. I think, for example, when people come and testify before us and say there's 100 units in an affordable housing development, the total cost is X. They do the math. That's a highly misleading figure because it doesn't take into account common spaces. It doesn't take into account service-enriched spaces and other things. So I just did the math on my phone. my intent in putting a number out there was just to have someone tell me compared to what?
Thank you
just
for
some benchmark. And I'm persuaded, mostly by Mary's testimony, in fact, that this is the right thing to do. The mayor certainly supports it. If my colleagues are prepared to vote on it, we'll call the roll. Carla, would you please call the roll?
Saltzman?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Well, this is an item that I had sticker shock when I looked at it, and that's why my staff and I drilled into it. I do think it's reasonable. When you look at the cost of things like sitting, standing desks, those are not inexpensive, and yet they save us a lot of money on workers' compensation and in employee health in order to be able to provide employees with the kinds of workstations that are efficient and go between people and, as I say, preserve their health. So I'm happy to support it. Aye.
Aye, the matter passes. Thank you. Colleagues, we have one final item. We saved the best for last. Andrew Abbey is here. And Carla, would you please read Council Item 393?
Declare intent to initiate local improvement district formation proceedings to construct street, sidewalk, stormwater, and sanitary sewer improvements in the Northeast 55th through 57th Avenues and Killingsworth Street Local Improvement District.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, President Fish. I believe we're all aware of this LID. Now it has now changed since our last hearing on it. And Andrew Abbey is here who'll quickly walk us through all this. This is a council-initiated local improvement district, so we'll be voting today on the resolution, and that then kicks off the process. And I will remind council that this is a great opportunity to leverage Habitat for Humanity funding for the majority of this LID, with substantial PBOT, Bureau of Transportation, system development charges dollars for significant economies of scale while delivering much needed infrastructure to diverse and underserved populations in Northeast Portland.
Andrew,
Turn it over to Andrew.
Before we call on you, can we ask our friends up in the second tier what school you're from? From Buckman? Buckman, well, welcome. This is democracy in action. We're glad you're here, folks. Andrew Abbey.
Thank you, Commissioner Fish. Andrew Abbey, Local Improvement District Administrator. We're having a minor technical difficulty with getting the presentation up and running. I've handed out the hard copies, and I'll just go ahead and walk those through while we get that squared away. So the project that we're bringing before you today would double the number of north-south connections that we're proposing to build in Cully. So previously, we were just looking at building Northeast 57th Avenue. Some of the feedback that we got from property owners along 57th Avenue was that with the lack of connecting and improved north-south connections in Cully between Northeast 52nd and 60th Avenues, that there was concern that we not have one connection opened up and then have that one connection bear the brunt of the traffic. And so the key change that we've made here is to also put Northeast 55th Avenue south of Emerson into the project scope so that we would do something unprecedented, which we haven't done before to my knowledge, which is to build not one, but two newly improved north-south connections in Cully. And I think that's a very important model moving forward because Cully does have such a severe lack of north-south connections. One of the things we grapple with is prioritizing where to improve streets. And sometimes there's a tendency to want to pick one street and improve that one. But I think the big takeaway from the outreach process with the property owners and the Cully Association of Neighbors is that we really do need to look at this holistically. And in some cases, it may be better for us to put a little bit more of our eggs in one basket and build two connections to more evenly disperse the traffic than to just build one street in isolation. So if you look at slide 2 of the PowerPoint, you can see 57th would be improved from Killingsworth to Emerson. The amount proposed for assessment on those property owners is unchanged from what we were discussing with them late last year and early this year. We would have a new assessment for Trinity Lutheran Church and School over on 55th and Emerson. And I think this really underscores the importance of making these connections. Cully is a very diverse community, and it has it's the only minority neighborhood in the city of Portland. There's a disproportionate number of people who rely on multimodal options to get around. So we have a mobile home park on the north side of Killingsworth at 57th. We have a school over at 55th in Killingsworth. We have another school to the south, Rigler Elementary School. So what we're attempting to do with this project is build the needed connectivity in Cully. As you know, we had a 5-alarm fire in Cully in March. A couple of weeks ago, there was a police incident a few blocks away that resulted in the streets being blocked. And when you have those kind of incidents come up, then having these additional connections is really very important. Thank you very much, Carla. So here's the slide that I've been describing to you. So we're proposing the 378 feet of improvements on Northeast 57th Avenue. We have a relatively short connection on Northeast 55th Avenue, a little over 100 feet. And then we also have some sidewalk connections on Killingsworth Street. And I just want to put this into context a little bit for you. So Cully has 9.3% of its streets unpaved, which is about triple the citywide average. We have paved through an LID one street since 1998. Just to put this into perspective, Vera Katz was mayor in 1998. She got elected 26 years ago. So improvements have been a long time coming in Cully. I mentioned the diversity of Cully. As of 2010, it was 21% Hispanic, 16% African American. Just moving on to this next slide, this is the last LID we did in Cully. So this was the east-west street, Alberta Street, that we built just east of Sacagawea Park. We certainly had a lot of discussions with the neighborhood that this was the only east-west street for a long distance around. Suffice to say that we bit the bullet and got that street improved, and the residents have been very happy with it. The concern about a lot of cut-through traffic is just simply not materialized. This is what the street looked like as we were constructing it in 2014. So it's just been a really remarkable improvement, and we'd just like to build on this for the next LID in Cully. And just to wrap up my presentation, this is the south side of Killingsworth Street. We have a high-frequency bus line here. I believe it's the second highest ridership in the TriMet system. There's no place for people to walk to get to the bus, so we want to build sidewalks as part of this project. We received I communicated with TriMet on this, and they indicated the importance of having sidewalk connections connecting to transit because they make big investments in service frequency, and they really wanted to see sidewalk not just on Killingsworth, but also on the streets immediately feeding into Killingsworth to help encourage access to transit. So just one final note, I just wanted to highlight the funding aspect of this. So of the total LID amount of roughly $1.4 million, PBOT is kicking in a little over $800,000. The LID is kicking in $600,000, so PBOT would fund the majority of the cost of this project. I would also note that of the LID portion, $400,000 of that is from institutional property owners, and so roughly 2/3 of the LID amount is from institutional property owners, and 1/3 are the residential property owners. So it's really a double win for the property owners. There's majority city funding for this, and then of the LID amount, we're leveraging the developer and institutional funding. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Colleagues?
Could you go back to the map, please?
Yeah.
Why isn't the property on the other side of 55th from Trinity Lutheran included in the LID?
The reason that they're not included, Commissioners, that's not an existing passable right-of-way for them, and so that particular frontage really offers more of a systemic benefit. We just didn't, it was a judgment call, Commissioner, but you know that it's very standard practice to assess people for streets that are open to vehicular use. It just seemed a little bit strange to knock on somebody's door and say, well, the street doesn't currently exist. I think even more importantly, Commissioner, there really isn't, to my knowledge, much redevelopment potential for that particular property, so it just didn't seem to be that nexus of impact to benefit. So
I knew you'd have a good answer, which is why I didn't mind asking the question, even though I hadn't asked it ahead of time. And is Trinity Lutheran in support of this?
yes.
Thank you.
And I also just want to note, Commissioner, for the record, we did notify the property owners along 57th from Killingsworth down to Prescott and the property owners on 55th that we were doing this. We don't make it a practice of asking people permission to build things in the rights of way, but in the interest of transparency, we did want to notify everybody that we were proposing to do this. I only got one phone call since those letters went out. So I just wanted to note that we did communicate with the property owners as far as what our intentions were.
Well, I think they were watching this quite closely, so I don't see an army of folks with pitchforks, so presumably they're happier at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So colleagues, this is a resolution. Carla, has anyone signed up to testify?
Yes, we have 4 people. The first 3, please come on up, are David Sweet, Laura Hallett, and Lanny Frank.
Why don't we bring all 4 up if we can?
And David Karushima.
Good. I think we have 4 seats, or maybe
No, we only
Andrew.
have 3 chairs up there.
Okay. Andrew, can we put one more
he's
one more
over
chair?
this.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy lives to be here. Why don't you kick us off, sir?
Thank you, Commissioner Fish. Commissioners, my name is David Sweet. I am the Transportation and Land Use Chair for the Cully Association of Neighbors, CAN. Cully Association of Neighbors is in full support of this LID. As Andrew was pointing out, we were annexed to the City of Portland in 1985. And we lack crucial transportation infrastructure, particularly north-south connectivity between 42nd Avenue and Cully Boulevard, a distance of about a mile. There are no collectors and no arterials going north-south. There are just a couple of neighborhood streets that actually go through our neighborhood. And we end up with pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular traffic all using just a few routes, often without sidewalks. 28% of the streets in Cully have no sidewalks. So we're doing a lot of sharing of streets, and many of those streets are not improved. The proposal would add 2 additional north-south connected routes. This is critical for us. It provides access to much-used Conomox Park. It provides access to Rigler Elementary School, the Providence Elder Care Center, and of course, critical emergency access that we very much need, as was pointed out recently with our 5-alarm fire. So we're very grateful to Andrew and the Bureau of Transportation for crafting a very creative proposal that gives us not 1 but 2 new routes north-south that PBOT has found the money to bring down the cost of this for the neighbors, and very grateful to Commissioner Salzman for his leadership on this issue. Thank you very much, Commissioner. We're really pleased with this and urge you to support it.
Thank you very much, David. Welcome, sir.
Yes, I am Lanny A. Frank. I'm Properties Chairperson for Trinity Lutheran Church, and I'm also...
Move the mic a little closer to your mouth. Thanks. Yeah.
And I'm also a resident of the Cully neighborhood, about 3 blocks away from the church. Trinity was established in 1891, and it moved to this area in 1959. We consider ourselves a member of the community. We are for creating a better north and south connection to the inner part of the neighborhood. We have people cutting through our property because there is no street on 55th. We have them cut through, they cut through our property to get to the bus. And just the other day, I realized that the high school students also cut through our property to get to the city bus. And we've had some negative problems with this, as one day we had somebody actually knock down the fence at the end of 55th and drive through. We have people cutting through our property when we are having recess, most of them really great people, but it sometimes makes the teachers a little bit nervous. One instance is that we think there was a drug deal going across there between 55th and Emerson. Our church and school is very active in the community. Last weekend, we had a cleanup, Cully cleanup, which I believe is probably the largest in the city of Portland. And we volunteer our land for that. We also open it for Easter egg hunts with the community, and we have no problems with children coming after school, playing in our playgrounds, playing soccer on our fields, even running their dogs on our field. And there are some really great people. They pick up after themselves, and we respect them. The school and the church is very open with the Latino community. We have a food bank on our property, and we also sponsor ESL for the Latinos. Our school is about equally divided between Latinos, Afro-Americans, and European Americans. So I hear the buzzer going off, so I probably should close. But we would appreciate it if you approve this route between through there. That we feel it will have very little impact on through traffic. In fact, it will be just letting the inner neighborhood people access to Killingsworth.
Mr. A. Frank, thank you very much, and your statement will be made part of the record.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Laura Hallett. I'm the on-site manager of the Arbor Mobile Home Park, which I'm sure you're all aware of was a very negative space and time. We're a very positive park now, and we are 100% in support of this. Many of my tenants are walkers. All of their children go to Wriggler. They have to walk up a street that is high traffic with no sidewalks if they choose to go to the school with their children and walk up there, because there is no public transportation between our place and Wriggler Elementary. So this will give them a safe environment to walk. On top of that, as you know, we've had two very, very significant problems within Cully, the fire, and then just a couple of weeks ago, the hostage situation. We were locked in a position where we had minimal access to get out. So if you were in the zone to evacuate, your choices were Cully or and down Killingsworth, which was closed, or up Cully, which is a one-lane and is congested. So we didn't have enough access to get in and out. So for those reasons, the Arbor Mobile Home Park, and then myself as a resident of the Cully neighborhood for the last 11 years, are 100% in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir, welcome.
Hi, my name is David Kuroshima. I'm one of the residents on 57th between Killingsworth and Prescott. I've also, I've been there for about 10 years, own a house there, and I've also worked for the Community Cycling Center and taught bike camp at Wriggler Elementary. So I am also in favor of this connection through. As a resident on 57th, though, I am just concerned about traffic calming measures that I was, unfortunately, I didn't know if this was the best place to address this, but this is like the first thing I had heard about it. And I'm just concerned because like on 52nd, I think it's the other closest interconnection between Prescott, Killingworth, and there's plenty of speed bumps and traffic calming measures there. And I'm, as a resident of a neighborhood that has very few through connections and very long blocks, I do notice that particularly late at night, people drive very fast in the neighborhood, and I just have concerns about this connection just increasing traffic, and particularly high-speed traffic on that neighborhood street. So that's really my only concern. I'm really excited to see more low-income housing coming into the neighborhood and more city improvements on the street, so I appreciate it.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you very much. Carla, does that conclude our public testimony?
That's all who signed up.
Colleagues, any follow-up questions? This is a resolution, so we'll be taking it to a vote. Carla, could you please call the roll?
Saltzman,
Well, I want to thank everybody who's participated in this. I want to particularly thank Andrew Abbey for the great work he does with neighbors and people to bring consensus. And this is, as I said in my opening remarks, this is also very important for Habitat for Humanity, which is creating part of the neighborhood out there too. And I just wanted to also thank Matt Grum in my office for his work on this as well. Aye.
Hugh Daly.
Well, thank you, Andrew, and everyone that came here today to testify. It's great to see this come to an amenable conclusion, or I should say agreement. We haven't concluded it yet until those streets are built. Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you, Commissioner Salzman, for your dedication of transportation money to this project. It represents an investment in an underserved community, underserved from many different standpoints, and demonstrates the city's commitments and PBOT's commitment to making those investments where they make the most difference. Thank you, Andrew Abbey. Once again, you have proven your worth to the citizens of Portland and taken a project which was contentious, to say the least, at the last time we had it here, and gotten it so that everybody's in support. And thank you to those who took the trouble to come down. We often do hear from people who are upset about things, and not quite so often from people who are in support, so thank you for doing that. Aye.
Fish.
Aye. The resolution passes. That concludes our official business. We'll be back at 2 o'clock to take up the 2035 Comprehensive Plan amendments. We're adjourned. Thank you all.